What's up, everyone? Welcome back to another review. This time, we're taking a look at the ultimate classic, Back to the Future. It is so hard to believe that this movie has reached its 35th anniversary, and this movie still gives me that same amount of joy it did when I first saw it when I was like 4 or 5 years old. That same adventurous and joyful spirit that this movie has, I still feel it every time I watch it. This movie still feels fresh to me. So this video is not going to be much of a review. It's just going to be me just gushing all over and fanboying all over Back to the Future. So let's waste no time. Let's get right into it. What works about Back to the Future is Robert Zemeckis and Bob Gale are in complete control over their characters and all over their story. Marty McFly, Doc Brown. These are the two most likable characters ever put to film. Michael J. Fox's performance as Marty McFly. Bob Gale said it best. He is the steak. He is the steak dinner of this movie. His performance in this movie is just so real and it's just so down to earth and so relatable. And Marty McFly comes across as a very likable teenage kid. You know, unaware, has moments of self doubt, but he's not a coward at the same time. And Michael J. Fox's performance all throughout this movie is fantastic. The chemistry between Michael J. Fox and Christopher Lloyd is unbelievably unmatched. Christopher Lloyd as Doc Brown. What can be said about Christopher Lloyd as Doc Brown? The eccentric scientist who has a heart of gold. And the relationship between Marty and Doc is what the franchise is ultimately built around. Because their friendship is just, it's odd and unusual, but it's so real and so genuine. So yeah, right off the bat, Michael J. Fox and Christopher Lloyd, their chemistry is unbound and they hold this movie together. The plot of this movie, yeah, it could be convoluted when you look at it, but like I said, Bob Gale and Bob Zemeckis are so in control of everything that it doesn't matter because they know what they're doing and they're telling a story. And the story is this. Marty McFly got sent back to 1955 and now he's got to go back to the future to 1985. That is the basic plot line of this movie. But it's what happens in this movie that is so great. Because we see Marty McFly in 1985 before he goes back to the past. We see him interact with his father, played by Crispin Glover, his mother, played by Leah Thompson, the Biff, the bully, played by Thomas F. Wilson, who is fantastic in this movie. And Biff is the definition of a villain you love to hate. And when he gets his, you can't help but get out of your chair and just cheer on. Especially when you get to the end, when you get close to the end of the movie, when George McFly becomes a man. Great scene. And Crispin Glover's performance in general as George McFly, fantastic. And seeing just how he played George McFly as two different people. When we first see George McFly, he is a timid human being who does not stand up for himself. And when Marty goes back to the past and interacts with his teenage dad, Marty teaches his dad pretty much essentially how to get self-confidence and how to be a man. And it pays off beautifully when he knocks out Biff. And when Marty goes back to the alternate 1985 that was created, his father is a self-made man. He is self-assured. He's not an egotist at all, but at the same time he has self-confidence and he's well off for himself. And it's great seeing the evolution of George McFly, and it's done in such a natural, great way, and it's only fitting that it's a son who teaches his father to be a man, essentially. It's great stuff. This movie also has a bit of a... Now, this movie kind of has an uncomfortable romance, if you will, but the way the movie plays it off is so smart and so great. So pretty much when Marty goes back to the past, he's in the care of his mother because as Lorraine tells the story, if George had not been hit by by Lorraine's father's car, then none of them would have ever been born. Uh, Marty ends up taking the place of George, who get hit by the car, and as Doc Brown put it, it's the Florence Nightingale effect. Lorraine pretty much falls in love with Marty, but it's innocent in a way because Lorraine is just a teenage girl and Marty is this mysterious outsider that nobody knows about. So her infatuation is not of an incestuous nature, it's of a curious nature. And I like how Zemeckis and Bob Gale handled it by making it feel, by making it seem cute and not just hard and not just, hey, listen, that's your mom. Because Marty's full aware that his mom has the hots for me, but obviously he can't tell his teenage mother, hey, listen, 1985, you're going to be my mom. She'll find him to be crazy. So I like how that's handled, and it feels really real, and it makes Lorraine feel have a sense of innocence to her as well. It's really well handled. I love it. Love it a lot. Um, the cinematography in this movie is fantastic. Dean Cundey is an ace cinematographer. He's worked with the best from John Carpenter, Zemeckis, and Spielberg. The same talents he brought to those movies that he did, he brings to Back to the Future. This is a beautiful looking movie. Dean Cundey captures that 1985 aesthetic, and he captures that 1955 retro feel when Marty goes back to the past. It looks all genuine. It looks like you're watching a time capsule in a way. That's how awesome Dean Cundey is as a cinematographer, and that also goes to Zemeckis as a filmmaker. He's fantastic all throughout this movie. The production design in this movie are fantastic. The 1985 costumes look like they're from the 80s. The 1950 stuff all looks genuine, authentic, and real, and it's great. And seeing Marty McFly interact in a time, pretty much acting like a fish out of water in his own hometown 30 years before his birth, is really, really cool and very interesting to see how he reacts to everything and how he pretty much sets up things that happen. Like, he first sees Mayor Goldie Hawn working as a busboy and the waiter, and he gives him the idea to want to run for mayor. You know, he essentially creates the first skateboard in a very, very entertaining scene where he's like trying to get away from Biff and his gang, after Biff and Marty nearly have a fight inside the coffee shop. Great stuff, entertaining stuff, such good stuff. The Enchantment Under the Sea dance, probably one of the most intense, and yes, the most feel good moments of the entire movie. Not just because of George standing up to Biff, but Marty McFly has to go on stage and perform. But at the same time, the photo that he has is fading away. You know, his brother and sister have faded away, but now he's starting to fade away, and it's probably the most intense few seconds of the movie. And when George pretty much cements his manhood by kissing Lorraine, everything goes back to normal again, and Marty does not disappear. And then that segues into the great rendition of Johnny B. Bad, which is one of the most entertaining, just cool scenes in this movie. Seeing Marty act like Jimi Hendrix and Eddie Van Halen, very entertaining stuff. And then we get to the climax, the last 15 minutes of this movie, when Doc Brown from the past is trying to help Marty get back to the future. The best 20 minutes in any movie. It's still edge of your seat, even though you know what's going to happen. The movie is so well shot and just so well paced that the suspense just hooks you. Even though you know what's going to happen, you're still getting hooked, because that's the mark of excellent performances and that's the mark of excellent direction. Great stuff with Back to the Future Part 1. Outstanding stuff. And like I said, just seeing Marty interact with the past versions of his parents, interacting with the past version of Doc Brown, and Marty trying to prevent Doc Brown's death, because before Marty went back to the past, they were attacked by the Libyans and Doc Brown was killed. So seeing Marty interact with Doc Brown in 1955, to Marty it's like, if he doesn't prevent Doc Brown's death in 1985, he's never going to see his friend again. And it's really touching moments like that really work. And like I said, the performances between Lloyd and Michael J. Fox are just so real and just so genuine that when they have their final goodbye, you feel sad in a way, because we know that Marty sees Doc Brown dies, and we want to see Doc Brown read the letter that Marty sends him, but Doc Brown does not want to alter the future in any way, shape, or form. And it's great stuff all around. And it does have a cool payoff when Doc Brown reads the letter and is like, hey, what the hell? It's great stuff. I love it a lot. And I love that this movie unintentionally had a hook for a sequel. Great stuff all around. But this movie does have a beginning, a middle, and an end. And that hook for a sequel, it's not really a sequel bait type of thing. It kind of leaves it open, like, hey, there potentially could be more story to tell. But the movie does have a beginning and a middle and an end, and it ties up its standalone story perfectly. So yes, in case you haven't noticed, I love Back to the Future. This movie is a 10 out of 10. I love this movie. I think it's fantastic. Anyway, those are my thoughts on Back to the Future. Let me know yours in the comment sections down below. Like the video and subscribe, and I will check you back next time for more.